Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. It is Alex here from Horus Rising, and today we are doing the long awaited Thousand Suns deck profile. Another 50 card deck, but unlike the Iron Warriors, the Thousand Suns are much more combo based. So as we run through this deck, we're also going to skim over a few ways in which the cards can interact and how you kind of want to get your engines running. So jumping into the summary, this is another fairly balanced deck from a card type perspective, a little more heavily weighted towards the tactics, something you probably expect from the Thousand Suns, and from a power perspective, largely low costs, though some of those 4 and 3s are Thousand Suns tactics, which, as we'll get into later, can be reduced in cost to around a 1 or a 2 power. Anyway, moving on to the deck itself, beginning of course with the Warlord, we are running Ahriman, largely because he's the only Thousand Suns Warlord currently out, but he also does work well alongside this deck. Stat wise, he's fairly standard, 0 initiative and 35 hit points and 2 abilities. The top one, as its passive, is his Foresight, and this basically means that at any point during my action phase, I can look at the top card of my deck and either return it to the top or place it on the bottom. So a nice to have sort of consistency booster. His second one though is that you can pay 1 power and discard 1 card to place a Thousand Suns tactic from our casualty zone onto the bottom of our deck. And why is this good? Well, it allows us to play less copies of each tactic, basically, knowing that we can recycle them and most of the time then search it out to again back out from the deck. So again, just a consistency booster. Moving on to our troops now, the core of our deck, we are playing 3 copies of Mechatray Cabal. This has frontline for a 3/3, and when it's deployed, we can search Thousand Suns tactic and add it to our hand. So this card is going to form the crux of a lot of our strategies. It's going to search out the cards we need. It's also going to protect some of the squishiest troops that we'll get into with once per turn effects. It also has the passive effect of reducing the cost of our tactics by 1, which is nice too. And you'll see actually as we get on that the Thousand Suns tactics themselves all reduce each other by 1 for each Thousand Suns troops. So combining these, we actually get them pretty low. Next up, 3 copies of Calmet Squad, a 2/2, but comes with the effect that after deployment you can look at and rearrange the top 3 cards of the opponent's deck, which again is going to combo with some of our tactics. Really though, we're kind of playing this for its second effect, which is that you can exile this card from your casualty zone and add 1 Thousand Suns troop from your casualty zone back to your hand. So what we're going to use this for is basically for pulling our higher level troops back from the casualty zone later in the match. We have 3 copies of Failed Tauron. Once per turn you can guess the type of card on the top of your opponent's deck and reveal it. If you guessed it right, you can search any Thousand Suns card from your deck. Very versatile because of that, and again it combos with the tactics, and you see before I was discussing that Calmet Squad can rig the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. This allows it to come over this and basically guarantee the guess each time. Last one of the cores, 3 copies of Pride's Squad. Like Failed Tauron, this is a guessing game for your opponent's top card, but this time you target an enemy unit, and if you guess right, you deal 3 damage. So this is our bombardment unit. It's going to hide behind our front line, but also allows you to take out units hiding behind their front line. And again, you know, once you're set up with the guessing game, you can basically constantly get this card off every single turn. 2 copies of Unem Librarian. Now, he allows us to activate Thousand Suns tactics from our casualty zone as if they are in our hand. It's just that afterwards we have to exile them, which it is a steep price, so Unem is really only here for must-have or must-use situations. Like the Mechatray Cabal, he does reduce them by 1 again, so again, useful just to get all of the Thousand Suns tactics down to the lowest cost possible. 2 Sekhmet Terminators, a 6 cost big beat stick with frontline just to bulk out our troops. And lastly, for our Thousand Suns, our big boy, 2 copies of Balek Uthazur. He has ward, so he can't be targeted by your opponent. Comes with a decent stat line, but to be honest, especially for his cost, nothing exceptional. Where he is useful though is his deployment ability, which returns one card on the field back to the hand. So versatile again, either bouncing a high cost enemy card or saving one of your own that's about to be destroyed or something. His second effect is also very useful. For 2 power, we can shuffle one of our exiled tactics back into our deck and draw 1 card. So not only is this going to recycle the cards that we can potentially burn off Unum and also a tactic we'll get onto later, but we can also use this to draw, which allows us to basically continually spit out powerful tactics, which is why I think Balok makes up for his less than average stat line. Final troop, of course, 1 copy of Goldstone's Hunters for that jack of all trades cards that needs no introduction. There was 1 card left in the deck and nothing that needed to be in there to fill it, so I turned to my sideboard video and Goldstones was the standard. So this card is in here, but in all honesty it can be switched out for anything that you may need at any point. Turning to our tactics, we are running 3 resupply for obvious reasons. No reason not to run 3 in every deck. We're running 1 Soul Crush. This allows us to declare 1 card name and your opponent must discard all copies of that card in their hand, though if it isn't in their hand, we discard 1 randomly. So now you see where all the rigging and the viewing in the opponent's deck comes in. 3 copies of Witchfire, our Thousand Suns Warp Lightning. This is our generic deal 3 damage, costs 4, though reduces itself for each Thousand Suns troop we control, and coupled with the other reductions we can comfortably get this down to 1. And then Unum allows us to activate it from the CZ2, which is pretty fun. Now, one of the most important cards in the deck, Future Sight. This is an equip tactic, so we're going to equip it to Ahriman, but what he does is very similar to his passive, but this time we're going to look at the top card of our opponent's deck and place it either on the top or bottom. So this is the card I'm going to search quickly, get it out, start comboing with all our other cards, and then we can start hitting our troops abilities perfectly each turn, and we're also going to use this to Soul Crush away any danger we spot. Now for one of our combo pieces, 2 copies of Psychic Explosion and 2 copies of Conscious Subversion. Psychic Explosion, fairly straightforward, target 2 troops, 1 on each side of the field and destroy them. But Conscious Subversion here allows us to take control of an opponent's troop until the end of the turn, though it can't attack. So this works basically as our removal package. It allows us to get rid of 2 of our opponent's troops, 1 that we're taking control of because it's outright destruction. Now, it's particularly good at removing those ultra high cost cards because it destroys, getting through basically any survivor or similar effects. We're also running 2 copies of Scorched Earth for resource destruction and 2 copies of Lectitio Divinitatis for draw power. Now finally onto our resources, we're running 3 Warp Rifts and 3 Plasma Generators, very standard package. 3 Dagonets. This basically allows us to pay up to 2 power to destroy itself and then deploy 1 field resource from our deck that costs the same as the amount of power we paid. So this can search Warp Rift, or more so one of these 3 copies of Thousand Suns resource card, Pyramid of Light. So this nets us 2 power each turn, like Warp Rift, but it's a little more expensive as its second effect basically allows us to discard Thousand Suns troops to turn them to ash to gain power, gaining 1 for 1 basically. Again, a steep price, and really only useful in emergency, though it can be used to dump Calmet's squad into the casualty zone for its exile effect. We're also running 1 Forge Fane. This just searches an equip tactic on deployment, so obviously it's going to search us our Future Sight, and 1 Thermoplasma Generator just for that extra power boost if we need it. Finally, we are running 1 copy of the Thousand Suns field resource Whispers of Tizca, a field resource that nets us no power, but instead comes with a very useful effect. It has a passive effect to reduce our Thousand Suns tactics by 1, again basically ensuring with the rest of this deck the tactics are always on the lowest cost, but its second effect allows us to play a whole array of the tactics and then add them back to our hand at the end of the turn. Basically it reads, once per turn you can discard 1 card, then during the end phase add Thousand Suns tactics with different names from your casualty zone up to the number of tactics we played this turn. though next time we play these we do need to exile them. So this is going to allow us basically to absolutely storm the field with tactics across 2 separate turns, basically getting 2 very quick uses out of them, though while this card does come in clutch sometimes, it is, other than Goldstones, the card probably most likely to be switched out because it's so situational. And now we do have Unem as well, and he does a very similar thing. If it did go, I suppose I would probably switch it out for some interruptions, or I guess maybe more field card destruction since we're only running 2 Scorched Earth. Anyway, that is basically going to wrap it up for this deck profile. So now we have 2 out there. We have the 1000 Suns and the Iron Warriors. So I guess the next step is to probably get the 2 decks playing against each other to basically see which deck profile came out on top. Other than that, we're going to be doing another pack opening shortly of the latest release, Chaos Rising, seeing what we can get out of that. But otherwise, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.